Where has GASB been? This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hello, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. I'm Brad Muniz, your host for the bi-weekly accounting and auditing episodes. I'm the partner in charge of accounting and auditing at Sobel & Company. These A&A episodes qualify for Nano CPE credit. If you're interested in earning CPE credit for this or other episodes, hit the pause button now and head over to njcpa.org/nano to find out how. Quick disclaimer, the views and statements expressed herein are my own and not necessarily those of NJCPA or Sobel & Company. Okay, so believe it or not, really not much going on with the FASB this episode. For some reason, they've kind of gotten into a little bit of a lull, but I am leaving from this taping session and going to a A&A resource group meeting to find out if there's anything more that they hear of things going on. But from what I've read, I really haven't seen much of the FASB coming out with anything, which is usually makes me nervous because sometimes, you know, the calm before the storm. Okay, AICPA also hasn't been very active with much content coming out as to standards or proposed standards, but the AICPA did put out an audit quality survey. And I found it really interesting. They surveyed over 1,000 participants who cited elements of leadership or tone at the top is really what was critical to the system of quality management. Now, let's step back a second. I don't know if you remember months ago. If you don't remember, you can go back and look at prior episodes of the A&A episodes, and you can remember that they're coming out with a quality management pronouncement or guidance, let's say, Systems of Quality Management, SQM. Now, if you notice, I keep using quality management because they're getting away from the phrase quality control because they say you don't control quality, you manage quality, for whatever that's worth. But the Systems of Quality Management, there's two proposed pronouncements or guidance that's going to be coming out, and some other guidance that ties directly with audits. But it's extremely significant change. The A&A resource group had put a comment letter about it, many things that are in there, and you really need to look into this, especially some of the smaller practitioners, because this is going to put extreme onus on what you have to have in place and what you have to have documented. I sat through a meeting last week of different firms throughout the country and A&A people, and we talked about this guidance again and how onerous it's going to be. You have to evaluate every element as it relates to the A&A practice and determine the quality of those elements, CPE training, your resource materials, etc. Okay, so as part of this survey, now that I've gotten off my soapbox, here are some of the items that they've cited. Managing partner CEO is responsible for the system of quality management. The tone has to come ultimately from the top. Even if the managing partner or CEO is not a CPA, the tone still should come from the top, and they are responsible for quality management. Operational responsibility lies with those that are competent to serve in those roles. So don't just put a figure in the head in there to cover an area. Some other indicators of quality: engagement partner or senior members of management should review significant work papers. There should be a proper risk assessment performed. A strong understanding of the client, and which I found very interesting that they said this in the survey, a strong understanding of the client, because that a little bit is in conflict with the auditor rotation that's always being floated out there. And I'm not talking partner rotation, I'm talking auditor rotation. You've heard this through the years. I know one of our legislators in New Jersey, who was a nurse, wanted to come up with a law about auditor rotation, and New Jersey Society of CPAs kind of did some, not work, but talk with them and educated them to understand how important it is to know your client and how helpful it is, and sometimes auditor rotation actually hurts that. And they said here in the survey, strong understanding of the client. Planning performed by experienced person. How often do you see in an audit the planning is just given to the lowest level person? Just get these checklists done. Engagement partner, senior manager, senior members of the engagement have adequate time throughout the engagement. And the SEC, PCOB have been picking on this for years. EQR should not be part of the team. It should be a separate person, which is going to make it a little bit harder for some of the smaller firms. And that's where I was mentioning that you really need to look into this and what's going to be required under the system of quality management. Some other indicators: proper CPE and training, industry-specific quality control materials, and lastly, reasonable deadlines. Okay. SEC. Now, a lot of people wonder why I have SEC information in here. I know a lot of people that view this do not do public work, but what I have found and others have found is that what happens at the PCOB level kind of trickles down to AICPA. What happens, excuse me, at the SEC level sometimes trickles down to AICPA or the FASB, and that's why we look at it, because they seem to be a little bit of a forecaster as to what's going to go on. Plus, that's where the most news comes in. Okay. The SEC extended the comment period for climate-related disclosure. Now you see why I bring this type of stuff up, okay? Because if the SEC is thinking about this, now you're saying, well, maybe it's just going to be in the 10K and it's not going to be in the footnotes. That's not what we're hearing. There's a international body out there, the International Standards, Sustainability Standards Boards, the ISSB. And I was in a session yesterday, and we were talking specifically about ESG, which I'll mention in a second. And the presenter felt that the ISSB, if the U.S. does not come up with their own standard setter, will probably be the bellwether for the standard setters of ESG. So what is ESG? Environmental, social, and governance. This is a big area that, especially internationally, that they're looking at this and requiring particular reporting. And we're wondering what's going to happen in the United States. Right now, the FASB's been very quiet on it. They feel that they have other contingent disclosures, but we think that something could come out and that the ISSB could be the push. With that said, the AICPA actually has a practice aid for considerations of ESG-related matters in an audit of financial statements. So if you remember the AICPA, and if it's not under a certain quality center, try and get your hands on that. It's around 25 pages, 30 pages. Interesting information in there, especially if you are an auditor, and especially if you're an auditor and there's some international components. You want to know about this. In March, the SEC came out questioning the conflicts of interest and independence of firms, such as firms that assist clients in different ways, such as raising capital, and also act as the auditor. As part of their survey that they did, or the review, the data mining, not survey, the data mining they did, they found that non-audit fees constitute more than 25% of fees paid to the firm that are an audit client. So you can see what they're starting to do. They're starting to focus on auditors that perform other services. It goes back to the Enron days when they put a lockdown on it, and it's since loosened up, and it seems that they're kind of going back towards putting not a lockdown, but some restrictions, because that 25% bright line is what they're kind of focusing on. Okay. For Jack Daly, we've missed him. He's back doing ethics now, and if you need your ethics, take the sessions with Jack. He's back. For him and all his buddies, Bob Marone, GASB. There's a good article, actually, in the Accounting Today. If you can find the article, it's really interesting. Talks with the head of GASB. And they're focusing on some new standards and projects. Now, I know everybody's sitting here going, my gosh, she's talking about SEC, she's talking about GASB. Well, we have a lot of members that are RMAs, and we want to make sure we address everybody's needs. Some of the new standards that they're looking at are compensated absences. Now, I wonder, I'm imagining, and I don't do anything with governmental except when I was an intern and I worked at a firm doing some governmental work. I imagine compensated absences that they are focusing on, unpaid sick time. But anyway, compensated absences, changes of errors and corrections, digital assets, actually. They're focusing on it more than the FASB's focusing on it. Electronic financial reporting, subsequent events, and lastly, going concern and severe financial distress. Whew, a lot of stuff. Great article. If you get a chance, look it up, especially if you deal with GASB. You find some interesting stuff in there. Final area, International. The U.S. sanctions on Russia have extended to accounting and consulting services. I'm not getting political here. I'm not making any statements, just to say that the U.S. sanctions now roll into accounting and consulting services. I do know that there are a bunch of firms that have closed down their offices in there. Again, just reporting some information. And finally, China and U.S. is negotiating on-site inspections, particularly with the PCAOB. If you've known for years, the PCAOB could not get in there and do on-site inspections for quality reviews like how they inspect us here. And China is facing delisting. Some of the companies that are on the New York Stock Exchange are facing delisting. So China is trying to cooperate with U.S. and ultimately PCAOB to allow for on-site inspections. So it should be very interesting. And those are the top items that I have for this time. And remember, in closing, I'd like to remind you about some upcoming NJCPA events. If you missed the live broadcast for this month's free membership plus webinar, Oh My Fraud, it was really good. I did say it. Catch the replay on May 24th. It even features a bonus A&A update from May. I don't know why I said that, but anyway. And you could also attend the session with Frank and myself at the NJCPA Convention and Expo, which was returning in person. It's crazy. These prices are insane. In person at the Borgata in Atlantic City, June 14th to the 17th. Register for these events and more at njcpa.org/events. If you're not already a member of the NJCPA Accounting and Auditing Standards Interest Group, be sure to join at njcpa.org/groups. Thanks for watching or listening.